Welcome to Deep of Kindness, where real stories touch real hearts. Here you'll find emotional, motivational, and true life stories that inspire hope, compassion, and humanity. Every story reminds us that even the smallest act of kindness can change someone's world. Subscribe and be part of a community that believes in love, empathy, and the power of doing good. Because kindness isn't just a word, it's a way of living. The alarm rang at 4:30 a.m., breaking the heavy silence of the one-room apartment. Aisha's hand shot out from beneath the thin blanket, searching for the phone before it could wake her husband. The old fan whirred lazily above her as she sat up, rubbing sleep from her tired eyes. The floor was cold, the air heavy with the scent of last night's leftover curry. She moved quietly, her steps light and practiced. Years of waking before dawn had taught her how to live without sound. In the corner of the room lay her worn-out shoes, cracked from daily use. She slipped them on, wrapped her shawl around her shoulders, and glanced once at Imran sleeping soundly. His breathing was calm, peaceful, a luxury she hadn't felt in years. In the dim light, she looked at him for a moment. Once, she had loved that face more than her own life. She still remembered the early days of their marriage, the laughter, the dreams, the promises. He used to tell her, "Just wait, Aisha. I'll build us a beautiful life." But that life never came. Instead came debts, endless debts, excuses, and sleepless nights. Her first job started at 5. She worked as a cleaner in an office building on the other side of town. The bus was crowded, the windows fogged with the breath of tired workers. Aisha clutched her small bag to her chest, holding the few rupees she had for fare and lunch. She watched the city wake up, the shopkeepers rolling up shutters, the tea stalls lighting their stoves, the smell of chai drifting through the air. When she reached the office, she tied her scarf over her hair and picked up the mop. The floors gleamed when she was done, though her back ached and her hands burned from the detergent. She didn't complain. She never did. Every hour meant another payment toward Imran's loans he had taken for businesses that never existed, for parties she was never invited to, for friends who only came when he was spending freely. By 9, she left the office and rushed to a small cafe nearby, where she waited tables until afternoon. The manager, a kind, middle-aged woman named Shazia, often asked her, "Aisha, don't you ever rest?" Aisha smiled, though her eyes told another story. "Maybe later," she would say softly, "when everything's okay again." The cafe filled with laughter and chatter, with the aroma of fresh parathas and coffee. Aisha moved between tables, balancing trays and smiles. Her feet hurt, her stomach growled, but she never allowed fatigue to show. People noticed her politeness, her quiet dedication, but no one saw the storm she carried inside. After the cafe closed, she rushed to her third job, tutoring 2 neighborhood children in math and English. She had once dreamed of becoming a teacher. Now, she taught in cramped living rooms, earning just enough to pay electricity bills and groceries. But even then, she loved the sparkle in her students' eyes when they understood a lesson. It reminded her that somewhere inside, a part of her still mattered. Evening came, but Aisha's day was far from over. Her final job was delivering parcels for a small online store. She rode an old bicycle through the narrow streets, balancing packages on the carrier. The night wind whipped against her face, carrying dust and the faint smell of rain. Her muscles screamed for rest, but her mind kept whispering, "Just a little more, Aisha. Just one more delivery." When she returned home past midnight, her body felt like it belonged to someone else. Her hands were rough, her shoulders stiff, her eyelids heavy. Yet the moment she opened the door and saw Imran watching television, she forced a smile. He barely looked up. "You're late," he said. "The shop had extra deliveries," she replied, setting her bag down. He sighed dramatically. No, if you worked faster, maybe we'd be done with all this debt sooner." The words stung, but she said nothing. She went to the kitchen, reheated his food, and served it quietly. As he ate, she looked at the calendar on the wall. 5 more payments left. Just 5. After that, she thought, maybe life would be lighter. Maybe he'd see how hard she had worked, how deeply she had loved him. Later, when she placed the envelope of her week's earnings on the table, he didn't even thank her. He counted the notes, nodded, and said, "Good. I'll pay Bilal tomorrow." "You have another shift tomorrow morning, right?" "Yes," she whispered. When he went to bed, Aisha sat by the window. The city outside shimmered with life, cars honking, lights flickering, stray dogs barking. She stared at her hands, blistered and cracked, and wondered how much longer she could go on like this. But then she remembered the promise she had made to herself the day she married him, to stand by him, no matter what. She leaned her head against the wall and closed her eyes. In her dreams, she saw a life where they were both free of debts, where she could buy a new pair of shoes, where laughter replaced exhaustion. But when the alarm rang again the next morning, that dream dissolved into reality. She rose, just as she always did, silently, dutifully, faithfully. Her life had become a rhythm of sacrifice, one she danced to without complaint. No one saw the woman behind the strength, the one who cried into her pillow some nights, clutching her aching chest, wondering if love was supposed to hurt this much. Yet every morning she carried on, for love, for hope, for him. And though her body was weary and her spirit bruised, she still believed in the promise that once the debts were gone, Imran would finally look at her the way he used to, with pride, with warmth, with love. But fate was crueler than she could imagine. Because while Aisha worked herself to the bone, Imran was out in the world spinning lies, playing games and laughing behind her back. And soon, very soon, she would overhear the words that would destroy the last piece of her heart. The night air was heavy and humid, carrying the faint smell of rain and dust as Aisha walked down the narrow street toward home. It was past 11 p.m., and the city's noise had begun to fade. Shutters closing, stray dogs searching trash bins, rickshaw drivers yawning by their parked vehicles. Her feet dragged, her shoulders slumped beneath the weight of the day. She had just finished a 14-hour shift. Her hands were swollen from carrying boxes, her wrists burned from scrubbing. But tonight she felt a flicker of excitement, a rare spark she hadn't felt in months. She had finished her work early and stopped by a small bakery on her way home. For once, she wanted to surprise Imran. She smiled faintly as she looked down at the small paper bag she carried. 2 warm naan breads and a box of his favorite chicken karahi from the street stall near the bus stop. She had even saved enough to buy a small slice of chocolate cake. He'll be happy tonight, she thought. Maybe they'd eat together, talk like before. Maybe he'd tell her about his plans now that the debts were almost gone. A cool breeze blew as she climbed the stairs to their apartment. The corridor light flickered weakly, casting long shadows on the damp walls. She adjusted her dupatta, balancing the bag carefully in her hands, and reached their door. But as she raised her hand to knock, a burst of laughter came from inside. It was loud, carefree, mocking, the kind of laughter that didn't belong in their small, struggling home. Her hand froze mid-air. She frowned. Imran rarely had visitors this late. Maybe his friends had come to discuss business. Maybe they were celebrating something. For a moment, she felt relieved. Perhaps the stress was finally lifting. She leaned closer, her ear inches from the wooden door. Then she heard it. "Why would I need to work, Yar?" Imran's voice, sharp, proud, arrogant. "I already have my own personal slave at home." The laughter came again, louder this time. Glasses clinked. Someone slapped a table. Another man whistled. Aisha's heart stopped. "I'm serious," Imran continued, his tone dripping with self-satisfaction. "She pays my bills, cooks my food, even irons my shirts before I go out. She's so stupid. She thinks she's helping me build our future." The words echoed like thunder in her ears. Her breath caught in her throat. "She doesn't even ask where I go or who I'm with," he went on. "I tell her I'm handling debt issues, and she believes it. I could be sitting at the cafe all day and she'd still bring me her entire salary with that sweet, obedient face." The men howled with laughter. Aisha felt her knees tremble. Her vision blurred as tears filled her eyes. The paper bag slipped from her hand, landing softly on the floor with a muffled thud, the naan flattening, the gravy spilling. Inside, Imran kept talking, his voice thick with pride and liquor. "You know the best part," he said. "She calls me her strength. Can you believe that? Her strength. When in reality, she's just my wallet and maid rolled into one." That was the moment something inside Aisha broke. The woman who had spent years defending him, who had taken loans in her own name, who had starved some nights to keep his promises alive, realized she had been living a lie. Every tender word he'd spoken, every apology, every promise had been a mask. Her hand went to her mouth as silent sobs shook her shoulders. The walls seemed to close in, the corridor spinning around her. She wanted to scream, to barge in, to throw the truth in his face, but her body wouldn't move. Instead, she stood frozen, listening to the man she loved strip away her dignity one cruel joke at a time. "I don't even have to tell her what to do," Imran laughed. "She does it all on her own. The perfect servant, loyal, silent, and cheap." The men roared again. Someone clapped. Another said, "You're lucky, bro! Every man wants a woman like that!" Lucky. The word burned in her chest like fire. Aisha turned away, her face wet with tears. Her throat tightened as she stumbled down the stairs, clutching the railing to keep from falling. Outside, the night felt colder. The street that once led her home now felt like a place she didn't belong. She sat on a low step under the flickering streetlight, staring blankly at the small box of crushed food lying beside her. The cake had melted, the icing smudged. It looked like her life, messy, broken, wasted. For years, she had believed in him, in them. Every overtime hour, every skipped meal, every bruise from exhaustion was for a dream they were supposed to share. But in one cruel moment, she realized it had all been for nothing. Her mind replayed his words again and again. My personal slave, my wallet, my maid. Each word was a knife. She thought of the countless nights she had come home to find him asleep, never once asking how her day had gone. The times she had rubbed his tired feet while hiding her own pain. The mornings she had smiled even when her body screamed for rest. All for a man who saw her as a servant. She hugged her knees, letting the tears fall freely now. Around her, the city moved on. Cars passed, dogs barked, someone laughed in the distance. But Aisha sat still, trapped in a moment that felt like eternity. She stayed there until the street grew quiet and the stars faded into dawn. Only then did she rise, slow and unsteady, wiping her face. She didn't go inside. She couldn't. The thought of seeing him, hearing that voice again, made her stomach twist. Instead, she walked toward the bus stop, the one she used every morning. The same road she took to work. But this time, her steps felt different, heavier, yet clearer. Something inside her had changed forever. She didn't know what she would do next. She didn't know how she would survive. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. The woman who had walked up those stairs with hope and love would never return again. That night had stripped away the illusion, the lies, the chains. And though she didn't yet realize it, that heartbreak, that unbearable pain, was the beginning of her freedom. The faint glow of dawn slipped through the thin curtains, spreading across the cracked walls of Aisha's room. For the first time in years, the alarm didn't ring. There was no rush, no hurried footsteps, no panic about missing the bus. The silence felt strange, but peaceful. Aisha sat up slowly, her body aching from exhaustion, but her heart quiet. The events of last night replayed in her mind like a broken film reel. Imran's laughter, his cruel words, the sound of glasses clinking, while her heart shattered in the hallway. Each memory stung, but instead of tears, there was a calm, a stillness that only comes when pain burns itself out completely. She looked around their tiny apartment. The small fan hummed above her. On the bedside table sat a photo, her and Imran, smiling, young and in love. She picked it up, stared at it for a long time, then placed it face down. Today, she wasn't going to work. Today, she was going to leave. Aisha opened her old suitcase, the same one she had brought when she first moved in after marriage. Its corners were frayed, the zipper rusted, but it still held the scent of her hopes. She folded her few clothes neatly, added her worn scarf, and tucked a small notebook inside, the one where she had written her dreams years ago. In a small tin box under the bed, she found her secret savings, a handful of crumpled notes, maybe just enough for a few weeks' rent somewhere. She had been saving them quietly, hiding a little each month for emergencies. She never imagined this would be the emergency. She hesitated for a moment, her hand trembling as she looked toward the closed bedroom door where Imran slept. He had come home late, half drunk, humming a song as if nothing had happened. She had pretended to be asleep, but deep inside she had already made her decision. A tear rolled down her cheek as she picked up a piece of paper and wrote with slow, steady strokes. "You had a wife, not a slave. Now you have neither." She placed the note on his wallet, the same wallet she had filled with her hard-earned money so many times. Then she looked around the room one last time, the peeling walls, the broken mirror, the empty promises. Without another thought, she opened the door and stepped outside. The morning breeze brushed against her face as she walked down the street. For the first time, she noticed how quiet the world could be before sunrise. The sky was painted with shades of gold and gray, and for the first time in years, she breathed freely, without the weight of someone else's expectations pressing on her chest. She didn't have a plan. She didn't know where she was going, but she knew where she wasn't going. Back. The bus stop was empty. When the bus finally arrived, she climbed aboard, found a seat by the window, and watched as her neighborhood disappeared behind her. Every turn of the wheel felt like a small victory, a slow escape from years of pain. When the conductor asked, "Kahan tak baji?" she smiled faintly and said, "Jahan nayi zindagi mile." Wherever a new life begins. The next few weeks were hard, harder than she had expected. She rented a single small room behind a tailor's shop in a quieter part of the city. She sold her jewelry, the few pieces she had left, to buy food and pay rent. She slept on the floor, often going to bed hungry. But even in that struggle, she found something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. No one shouted at her. No one mocked her. No one called her a slave. She started looking for work again, not to pay someone's debt, but to rebuild her own life. She took a part-time cleaning job at a boutique, folding clothes, dusting counters, and helping customers. The owner, a kind woman named Farzana, noticed Aisha's neat work and calm presence. One afternoon, Farzana asked, "You have a good eye for color and fabric. Ever thought of working in fashion?" Aisha smiled shyly. "I can sew a little," she said. Farzana handed her a small bag of scrap fabric. "Show me something by tomorrow." That night, under the dim light of a single bulb, Aisha sat cross-legged on the floor and began to stitch. Her fingers moved slowly at first, then faster, remembering skills her mother had once taught her as a girl. By dawn, a small embroidered scarf lay on her lap, delicate and beautiful. When Farzana saw it, her eyes lit up. "You made this?" "Yes," Aisha said softly. Farzana smiled. "Then let's make more." Months passed. Aisha began designing and stitching clothes for the boutique. Her quiet nature, patience, and skill soon earned her loyal customers. She learned to manage orders, deal with suppliers, and even greet clients with confidence. When Farzana decided to move abroad to join her children, she offered Aisha something that changed everything: The boutique itself. You've earned it, Farzana said. You've got the heart of a businesswoman, Aisha. Make it your own. Tears welled in Aisha's eyes. She couldn't believe it. From a woman who once had nothing but pain, she now had an entire shop, her shop. A year later, the signboard above the door read, Aisha's Creations, made with strength and grace. The boutique was small but full of life. Bright fabrics hung neatly on racks, the air filled with the scent of new cloth and jasmine tea. Customers came and went, praising her work and her kindness. Aisha stood behind the counter, greeting each one with a warm smile. Her hands, once scarred from endless labor, now created beauty. Every stitch she made was a piece of her healing. One afternoon, as she arranged the window display, she caught her reflection in the glass. The woman staring back wasn't the same one who used to cry in silence. Her eyes were calm, her posture straight, her smile real. For the first time, she saw herself, not as a wife, not as a victim, but as a survivor. Sometimes she still thought of Imran. She wondered if he ever read the note she left. Maybe he laughed, maybe he got angry, but it didn't matter.
He had lost something far more valuable than money: her loyalty, her love, her presence. As the sun set beyond the city skyline, Aisha locked the boutique door and stepped outside.
The sky was streaked with orange and pink. The same world that once felt cruel now seemed full of promise. She took a deep breath, feeling the cool evening wind against her face. Her life wasn't easy, but it was hers, and that was worth everything. She once worked to pay off his debts. Now she works to build her dreams. Some stories don't end with revenge, they end with freedom.